I didn't think much of it when Ryan forwarded me the message. Easy cash. Rich guy. Couple evenings a week. You interested? At the time, I was broke enough that rich guy was all I needed to hear. I'm Connor, 26. Freelance. Floating somewhere between figuring my life out and please let my bank account survive the month. I'd done my share of random side jobs, moving furniture, setting up smart TVs for people who didn't want to read instructions, even walking a guy's purebred dog that ate better than I did. So when Ryan, my best friend since college, and the one person who always seemed to stumble into opportunities, said a wealthy client needed help, I said yes without asking many questions. That should have been my first clue. The job was technically listed as personal assistant help, organization, errands, light household stuff, flexible hours, low stress, Ryan said, which made me laugh because nothing is low stress when you're poor and pretending you're not. The client's name was vague, just Mr. Hale, no last name attached to the address, which was already suspicious. The place, though, that part wasn't vague at all. I stood across the street the first night, staring up at a modern glass and stone house that looked like it belonged in an architecture magazine. Clean lines, warm lights glowing from inside, quiet neighborhood where every car probably cost more than my yearly rent. Ryan nudged me. Relax, you look like you're about to rob the place. I feel like I shouldn't be allowed near it, I muttered. He laughed and rang the bell. The door opened almost immediately, and that's when Connor the adult professional left my body for a solid 3 seconds. Mr. Hale? No, Connor, as he introduced himself, was tall in that effortless way. Not bulky, not gym bro, just composed. Late 30s maybe, early 40s. Dark hair, a little gray at the temples, button-down shirt rolled at the sleeves like he'd done it 1,000 times without thinking. His eyes landed on me and stayed there a fraction too long. Not in a creepy way, in a measuring way. Ryan, he said, smiling. You must be Connor. Hearing my name from his mouth did something weird to my stomach. Ryan did the introductions, all casual, already comfortable. Turns out he'd done a few tech setups here before. Smart lighting, security system tweaks, that kind of thing. He vouched for me like he always did, which I appreciated more than I said. Connor, Mr. Hale, invited us inside. The house smelled faintly like expensive coffee and something woody. Everything was spotless but not sterile, like someone actually lived here instead of staging it for Instagram. Art on the walls. Subtle. Tasteful. Probably worth more than my car. We talked basics. Schedule. Expectations. Pay. The pay made my brain short-circuit. I tried not to react, but he noticed anyway. His lips curved slightly, like he found my surprise amusing. I value discretion, he said calmly, and reliability. If that works for you. It does, I said a little too quickly. Ryan shot me a look, smirking. The plan was simple. I'd help evenings, organize his home office, handle some errands he didn't have time for, occasional travel prep, nothing strange, nothing intimate, nothing personal. At least, that's what I thought. Before we left, Connor walked us to the door. When Ryan stepped outside first, Connor leaned in just slightly, lowering his voice. You seem observant, he said to me. That's good. I appreciate people who notice things. I nodded, unsure what to say. His gaze flicked briefly to my mouth, then back to my eyes. Quick, controlled, but not accidental. Tomorrow evening? He asked. Yeah, I said. Tomorrow's good. The door closed behind us, and Ryan exhaled dramatically. Well, he said, you're definitely getting murdered. But at least you'll die in a nice house. I laughed, but my mind was still inside, replaying the way Connor had looked at me. Because here's the thing I didn't admit out loud. I hadn't gotten the sense that he hired me because he needed help. I got the sense he'd already decided he wanted me, and I had no idea why. I told myself I was overthinking it. That's my specialty, taking a perfectly normal interaction and dissecting it until it feels loaded. So when I showed up the next evening, I walked in telling myself this was just a job. Rich guy. Quiet house. Good pay. Don't make it weird. The door opened before I even finished ringing the bell. Connor stood there in a dark t-shirt this time, softer than the button-down from the night before, casual, domestic, like he'd just stepped out of his real life and let me peek inside. "You're right on time," he said. "I try," I replied. He stepped aside to let me in, close enough that I caught the faint scent of soap and something warmer underneath. I focused on taking my shoes off so I wouldn't stare like an idiot. We started in his home office. At least, that was the plan. The office was immaculate. Not messy enough to need real organizing. Just curated chaos. Papers placed just so, books arranged with intention. It felt less like he needed help and more like he wanted company while pretending he did. I didn't say that out loud. He leaned against the desk while I went through a drawer he'd pointed out, watching me in that quiet, observant way that made me hyper-aware of my own body. My hands, the way I stood, the fact that the room felt warmer than it should. So, he said casually, "Ryan tells me you freelance." "Yeah, bit of everything." "Do you enjoy the flexibility?" he asked. "Or is it survival?" The question landed heavier than it should have. I laughed softly. "Depends on the week." Connor nodded like that confirmed something for him. We worked in near silence for a while. Or at least, I worked. He hovered. Not micromanaging, just present. Every so often, he'd step closer to point something out, his arm brushing mine like it wasn't a big deal, except it was. To me, at one point, I reached for a folder at the same time he did. Our fingers touched. He didn't pull away. Neither did I. It was subtle. Barely a second. But I felt it all the way down my spine. "Sorry," I said automatically. His mouth twitched. "No need." That's when it shifted. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Just tilted. He stopped pretending to look busy and poured himself a drink. Then another. "Would you like one?" he asked. "I'm working," I said. "Connor," he corrected gently, "and you're helping me. That doesn't mean you can't relax." I hesitated, then nodded. "Sure." He handed me a glass. Our fingers brushed again, deliberate this time. His eyes met mine over the rim as I took a sip, smooth. Expensive, too easy to drink. We moved to the kitchen next. Or rather, he did, and I followed. He leaned back against the counter while I wiped a surface that was already clean. I felt ridiculous, but I also felt watched. "You're very attentive," he said. "It's the job." "No," he replied softly. "It's you." My stomach flipped. I straightened slowly, turning to face him. "What does that mean?" Connor studied me for a long moment. Not predatory. Not rushed. Just honest. "I hired you because Ryan trusts you," he said. "But I kept you because you're present. People usually perform around me. You don't." I swallowed. "I don't know if that's a good thing." He smiled. "It is for me." The air between us felt thick. Charged. Like we were standing on the edge of a conversation neither of us had named yet. I glanced at the clock, suddenly aware of how late it was. "I should probably stay," he said. Not commandingly, just openly. I hesitated. This was the moment. The one where a line either stayed where it was or disappeared completely. "I'm not asking for anything you don't want," he added quietly. "I just don't want you to leave because you think you're supposed to." That did it. I stayed. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, talking about nothing important. About travel. About the quiet comfort of being alone without feeling lonely. At some point, I realized how close he was sitting. At another point, I realized my knee was pressed against his. Neither of us moved. And that's when I understood something I hadn't let myself admit yet. This job wasn't about errands. Connor didn't need help organizing his life. He needed someone willing to step into it, and I was already halfway there. The next morning, I woke up already thinking about him. That annoyed me. I told myself it was just novelty. New environment. Rich guy with calm confidence and good lighting. Anyone would get a little distracted. Still, I checked my phone twice before breakfast, half expecting a message from Connor that had no reason to exist. Nothing. By the time evening rolled around, I was telling myself I was relieved. That's a lie. When I showed up that night, the house felt different, quieter, dimmer, like he'd adjusted it, knowing I was coming. No music playing, just soft ambient light and the city humming faintly outside. Connor was barefoot when he opened the door. "Hey," he said, like we'd known each other longer than 2 days. "Hey." He stepped aside again, and this time I noticed he didn't bother with the small talk. "No schedule, no tasks. Before we start," he said, closing the door behind me, "I want to be clear about something." My chest tightened. "Okay." He leaned back against the wall, folding his arms loosely. "Not defensive, grounded. I don't blur lines without consent," he said. "If you're uncomfortable, we reset. No pressure, no expectations." I nodded slowly. "And if I'm not?" His eyes darkened just a fraction. "Then we talk about what this actually is." Silence stretched between us. I realized something then. Connor wasn't playing games. He wasn't trying to trick me into anything. He was waiting, letting me decide. And somehow, that made it harder to walk away. "I'm not uncomfortable," I said. He studied my face like he was checking for cracks. Then he smiled. Small, genuine. "Good." We didn't touch right away. Instead, he handed me a stack of folders and actually let me work. The normality of it felt almost intimate after the tension. We moved around each other easily now, like our bodies had already agreed on a rhythm. At one point, I reached up to a shelf and felt him step in behind me to steady the ladder. His hand landed on my lower back. Not possessive, not accidental. Just there, I froze. "You okay?" he murmured. I nodded, breath shallow. "Yeah." He didn't move his hand right away. I became painfully aware of the space between us. Or rather, the lack of it. His chest was inches from my back. I could feel his warmth through my shirt. When he finally stepped away, the absence felt louder than the contact had. Later, in the kitchen, he cooked while I leaned against the counter, pretending I wasn't watching him. Sleeves pushed up, focused, comfortable in his space. "You don't usually eat with employees, do you?" I asked lightly. "No," he said. "I don't usually invite people into my evenings either." He plated the food and slid a dish toward me. Our fingers brushed again. This time, he let his linger. I didn't pull away. We ate slowly. Talked about childhood, about expectations, about how loneliness sneaks up on you when everyone assumes you're fine. "I'm surrounded by people," he said quietly. "But no one ever stays." The vulnerability caught me off guard. "I don't think that's because of you," I said. He smiled sadly. "You'd be surprised. When we finished eating, neither of us moved to clean up. We just sat there, close. So," I said, heart pounding. "What is this?" Connor turned toward me fully now. "This," he said carefully, "is two adults acknowledging interest." "And the job?" He didn't hesitate. "Still a job, unless you decide otherwise." My pulse thudded in my ears. He wasn't pushing. He wasn't pulling. He was offering. I leaned in first. Not all the way, just enough to make my intention clear. Connor's breath hitched. His eyes flicked to my mouth. "Connor," he said softly, my name sounding different now. Intimate. "Yes?" "If we do this," he continued, "it's because we both want it. Not because of money. Not because of power." I swallowed. "I know." Then he kissed me. Slow. Like he was giving me every chance to stop him. I didn't. His hand came up to my jaw, thumb brushing my cheek. The kiss deepened, not rushed, not desperate. Just. Sure. When we finally pulled back, my head was spinning. That's when I understood the truth I'd been dancing around since the first night. I hadn't agreed to a side job with a wealthy client. I'd agreed to step into a situation where everything, control, attraction, vulnerability, was laid bare, and Connor wasn't the one in charge. We both were. After that kiss, everything slowed down. Not in an awkward way. In a deliberate one. Connor didn't pull me closer. Didn't deepen it further. He rested his forehead against mine, eyes closed, like he was grounding himself as much as I was. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For choosing," he replied. That word stayed with me. We sat back on the couch, this time closer than before. Our shoulders touched. His arm rested along the back cushion behind me, not quite around me, but close enough that I felt it every time I shifted. Neither of us pretended this hadn't changed things. "I don't usually let people see this side of me," he said after a while. I smiled faintly. "The barefoot, cooking dinner, emotionally on his side?" He huffed a soft laugh. "That too. But more the part that wants something without knowing where it goes." I turned toward him. "Do you think I've got that figured out?" He looked at me, really looked. "No, but you don't hide it." That was probably true. I'd never been good at pretending indifference. If I wanted something, or someone, it showed. The night ended without anything more physical. No lingering touches. No pushing boundaries. Somehow, that restraint made it feel heavier, not lighter. When I left, Connor walked me to the door again. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah," he smiled. Not satisfied. Not smug. Just pleased. The next few days settled into a rhythm that felt dangerously comfortable. I came over in the evenings. Sometimes we worked. Sometimes we didn't. Sometimes I ran errands that absolutely could have been handled online. Sometimes he asked my opinion on things he clearly didn't need help deciding. We talked a lot about his divorce, about my drifting career, about how strange it is to want closeness but fear dependence, about power, how people assume you want control when you actually just want to stop being alone. We didn't kiss again right away. That surprised me. But the tension stayed. In the way his hand would hover near mine on the counter. In the way his gaze lingered when he thought I wasn't looking. In the way he always asked before sitting closer, like he was still checking in. One night, as I was packing up to leave, he said, "You don't have to go yet." I looked at the clock. It was late. "I don't want to cross a line," he added. I met his eyes. "Connor, the line's already gone. We're just deciding how we walk now." That earned me a long, unreadable look. "You're dangerous," he said finally. I smiled. "You hired me." This time when he kissed me, it was different. Still gentle. Still controlled, but familiar. Like something we were both starting to trust. After that, he walked me out, his hand brushing mine as we stood at the door. When our fingers intertwined, it felt natural. Easy! That should have scared me. What scared me more was how quickly I stopped thinking of him as the client, and how naturally I started thinking of the house as somewhere I belonged, because somewhere between the paid hours and the quiet conversations, I realized something else. Connor didn't just want me around. He was rearranging his life to make space for me, and I wasn't sure yet whether that was a gift or a responsibility I was ready to carry. The first time I slept over, nothing happened. That sounds like a lie, but it isn't. Connor offered the guest room like it was no big deal. Casual. Practical. No expectation layered underneath it. I told myself I'd say no. Go home, keep some structure intact. But I was tired, and the thought of leaving that quiet house felt heavier than staying. So I stayed. He handed me a towel, showed me the room, made sure I had everything I needed. When he lingered at the door for half a second too long, I felt it in my chest. "Good night, Connor," I said. "Good night," he replied. I lay awake for a long time after that, staring at the ceiling, hyper-aware of the fact that he was just down the hall, not touching me, not crossing a boundary, trusting me enough to let the tension exist without rushing to resolve it. That might have been the moment I realized this wasn't just attraction. The next morning, he made coffee like he always did. Calm, grounded, like he hadn't spent the night navigating the same thoughts I had. "You can stay again," he said easily. "Anytime." I nodded. Thanks. That word, thanks, felt inadequate for what was building between us. Over the next week, things shifted again. Not dramatically, just deeper. He started asking about my schedule, not as an employer, but as someone planning his time around mine. I noticed the fridge slowly filling with things I liked, the guest room starting to feel less like a guest room. Ryan noticed too. "Dude," he said one night over beers, "you're glowing, or spiraling." "Hard to tell. I'm fine," I said. He raised an eyebrow. "You're seeing him." It wasn't a question. I exhaled. "Yeah." Ryan leaned back, studying me. "You okay with that power dynamic?" That question stuck. I had asked myself versions of it in the quiet moments, in the pauses between Connor's words, in the way he always made space for my choices. "I don't feel small around him," I said finally. "I feel seen." Ryan nodded slowly. "Then just don't disappear into it." I promised him I wouldn't. That night, back at Connor's place, I found him sitting on the couch, jacket still on, staring at nothing. "You all right?" I asked. He looked up, surprised, like he hadn't heard me come in. "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" He hesitated, then said, "Us." My pulse quickened. "And? I don't want this to be something that quietly replaces your life," he said carefully. "I don't want to be a shortcut." I sat beside him. "Close." "You're not." He turned toward me. "Then tell me what this is." I took a breath. "This is two people choosing each other," I said, "but still choosing themselves too." Connor searched my face, then nodded. "Good," he said, "because I don't want to own you." The way he said it, soft, sincere, made something in my chest ache. That was the night we crossed another line. Not rushed, not hidden. We kissed like people who had already decided they trusted each other. His hand settled at my waist. Mine rested at his shoulder. When he asked, "Is this okay?" I answered honestly, "Yes." What followed wasn't about urgency or hunger. It was about closeness, about finally letting the tension exhale. Afterward, we stayed on the couch, legs tangled, quiet, and comfortable. No rush to define anything. No promises made too early. But when he traced slow circles on my arm and said, almost to himself, "I think I hired you because I didn't know how to ask you to stay," I understood the truth at last. He hadn't needed an assistant. He'd needed connection. And somehow I'd walked into his life thinking I was the one being paid, without realizing we were both investing something much riskier than money. The problem with comfort is that it sneaks up on you. One minute, you're being careful, checking in, watching boundaries, reminding yourself this is still complicated. The next, you're reaching for someone in your sleep like it's the most natural thing in the world. I woke up that morning with Connor's arm draped loosely over my waist. Not tight, not claiming, just there. For a split second, panic flared. Where am I? What did I do? But it faded almost immediately. The house was quiet, washed in early light. Connor's breathing was slow, and even behind me. I didn't move right away. I let myself feel it. The weight of his arm, the warmth at my back, the strange steadiness of waking up next to someone who didn't feel temporary. When I shifted slightly, his hand flexed, thumb brushing my side, still half asleep. "You okay?" he murmured. "Yeah," I whispered. "Didn't mean to wake you." He smiled against my shoulder. "You didn't." We stayed like that longer than necessary. No rush, no awkwardness. When we finally got up, it felt domestic in a way that scared me more than the attraction ever had. Coffee. Toast. Quiet conversation about nothing. At some point, Connor leaned against the counter, watching me like he was committing the moment to memory. "You don't disappear when things get real," he said. I glanced at him. Is that a compliment or a concern? Both. He admitted, that was when the reality started to settle in. This wasn't just evenings anymore. It wasn't a controlled environment with clear start and end times. This was bleeding into mornings, routines, expectations, and I realized something uncomfortable. I still worked for him, even if it didn't feel like it most of the time. The thought followed me all day. When I came back that evening, Connor noticed immediately. "You're quiet," he said. Thinking, I replied. He didn't press. He never did. Instead, he sat beside me, close but not touching, giving me space to decide what to say. I don't want to wake up one day and realize I stayed because it was easier than leaving, I said finally. Or that you stayed because you could afford to. Connor exhaled slowly, nodding. I've been thinking about that too. That surprised me. I don't want you to feel like you owe me time, he continued, or affection, or presence. I don't, I said quickly, then paused. But I need to know I won't. He looked at me for a long moment, then stood. Then we changed the rules, he said. I frowned. How? He walked to his desk, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to me. Inside was a neatly printed document. Short, clear. Termination of contract. Effective immediately. My stomach flipped. Connor, I don't need an assistant, he said gently. Not like this, and I don't want to wonder if you're here because it's paid. I stared at the paper, heart pounding. You're just letting me go? He smiled softly. I'm asking you to stay. Silence filled the room, not tense, heavy. I folded the paper carefully and set it aside. If I stay, I said, meeting his eyes, it's because I want to. And if I leave, you leave with no debt, he finished. No expectation, no resentment. That was the moment everything tipped. Not because he was rich, not because he was confident or calm or devastatingly present, but because he was willing to give up control. I stepped closer, resting my forehead against his chest. I'm staying, I said quietly. His hand came up, steady and warm at my back. Good, he murmured. So am I. And for the first time since this started, I felt it fully. Whatever this was becoming, it wasn't built on convenience or money or imbalance. It was built on choice. Every single day. Ending the contract didn't end the structure. That surprised me. I expected everything to dissolve into something vague and undefined, more emotional, more chaotic, but instead, Connor became even more intentional. Not controlling, not distant, just clear. Stay tonight, he'd say, or I need the evening to myself. Are you okay with that? And I was. Because I always knew where I stood. I moved some of my things over slowly, a toothbrush, a change of clothes, a book I pretended I wasn't reading just to feel at home. He didn't comment on any of it. He noticed, but he let me decide the pace. One night we sat on the floor of his living room, backs against the couch, sharing a bottle of wine. Do you ever worry, I asked, that people see you as a role instead of a person? He considered that. All the time. I don't, I said. He turned toward me. Why? Because you let me disagree with you, I said. And leave. And stay. You don't try to impress me. Connor smiled faintly. That's because impressing people is lonely. That line stuck with me. The real test came unexpectedly. Ryan called me out of the blue one afternoon. You busy tonight? He asked. I don't think so. There's an opening at this creative studio, short-term contract, pays decent. Could turn into more. My chest tightened. Where? Across town, different schedule. You'd be slammed for a bit. I knew what he wasn't saying. This wasn't compatible with drifting into someone else's life. When I told Connor, I expected something. Concern. Disappointment. Maybe even subtle resistance. Instead, he nodded. That sounds like something you should do, he said. You're not worried? He looked at me steadily. I'd be worried if you didn't. I took the job. The next few weeks were chaos. Late nights, early mornings, missed dinners, texts, sent half asleep. Connor didn't complain once. He adjusted. He asked how things were going. He reminded me to eat. One night, exhausted, I collapsed onto his couch and said, I'm scared this is too much. He sat beside me, brushing my hair back gently. Then we slowed down, not end. That difference mattered. I realized then what had actually changed since the beginning. Connor no longer felt like someone who needed me. He felt like someone who chose me, without gripping tighter when life pulled me elsewhere. And that made me choose him back. Not because I was staying, but because I was growing. Months later, sitting on the same couch where we'd first crossed that invisible line, I finally said it out loud. I love you. He didn't rush to answer. He smiled, soft, and I'm here. And somehow that felt even better, because this story didn't end with possession or rescue or transformation. It ended with two men learning how to meet each other, without needing to be needed.